Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here, and in this video I want to look at the chart of Janis Joplin, renowned singer, songwriter. I think she was more known for singing than songwriting, but guys, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you have not already. Go to Wikipedia. All right. Everyone knows who Janis Joplin is. If you don't, well, I guess I don't know. I don't know what to say if you don't know who she is. You probably should know. She's one of the most successful and widely known rock stars of the 60s. And electric stage presence. That's actually important. Electric, that they use the word. They're not even looking at astrology, but it's very telling. In 1967, she rose to fame following an appearance at Monterey Pop Festival, where she was the lead singer of little-known San Francisco psychedelic rock band Big Brother and the Holding Company. After releasing 2 albums with the band, she left Big Brother to continue as a solo artist with her own backing groups, Cosmic Blues, and then Full Tilt Boogie Band. She appeared at Woodstock Festival and on the Festival Express train tour. 5 singles by Joplin reached the Billboard Hot 100, including cover of Chris Christopher's song "Me and Bobby McGee," which reached #1 by March 1971. Her most popular songs include her cover versions of "Piece of My Heart," "Cry Baby," "Down on Me," "Ball and Chain," "Summertime," and her original song "Mercedes-Benz," which was her final recording. She died of a heroin overdose, although that's a little bit contested, which we can look at the age of 27. She's part of the 27 Club. After releasing 3 albums, second solo album, Pearl, was released January 1971. Just over 3 months after her death, it reached #1 on the billboards. She was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1995. Rolling Stone ranked her 46 on the top 100. Number 28 in the greatest singers of all time. She remains one of the top selling musicians of early life. Let's see, what's interesting here. Her parents thought she needed more attention than other kids. She befriended a group of outcasts and started singing when she was young. She was ostracized and bullied in high school. As a teen, she became overweight and suffered from acne. Called her names: pig freak, nigger lover, and I say it like that because I'm only saying it in quotes because that's what's quoted, and I don't want to needlessly offend anyone. She stated, "I was a misfit. I read, I painted, I thought, I didn't hate niggers." The N-word, as it's often called. Guys, I just like I said, there's no need to, needlessly insult or step on anyone's toes. So that's why I'm careful with it. I'm not one of these people. I really don't like just commentary just because it came up. Who cares? I'm not going to talk about it. Let's see. Okay, she went to high school and basically she got into drugs and alcohol quite young. Her first song, "What Good Can Drinking Do?" after a night of indulgence and drunkery. What else? There's so much to cover. I just want to touch on a few main points. Okay, so she started singing young, and she got into drugs. She was arrested in San Francisco for shoplifting. Drug use increased, speed freak, heroin user, psychoactive drugs, heavy drinker. Her favorite alcohol was Southern Comfort. I mean, the rumors are true, guys. As if you didn't know that. She was heavy into drugs and alcohol. Methamphetamines. She was skeletal and emaciated. She returned to her parents, blah, blah, blah. She, and so she got her weight down to 88 pounds, which is, I mean, that's skin and bones. That is skeletal, 88 pounds. So she had a long history of going on and off. It wasn't like there was no internal battle with her. It's not like she didn't try to get off the drugs and alcohol. She did repeatedly. And there were I'm not going to go through each one because it'll take too long, but repeatedly on and off drugs and alcohol, varying, like quitting drugs, keeping with the drink, quitting drinking, going back to the drugs, like that, like really trying to get a hold of herself, but not being able to. And then a lot of her bandmates would continually pressure her to get clean and sober, which she tried to do. But also, it has to be known that that whole scene, the rock and roll scene, was full of drugs and alcohol. Everyone, everywhere was doing it. And so, like, it's very difficult for her to keep it out of, sight and mind, because everywhere she went, everyone was partying and doing drugs. It was the 60s. Right. So it's important to note. So, she gradually, became more successful with her band and developed a career. She was very promiscuous with both boys and girls. She was lesbian, or at least bisexual, right? And she had a lot of boyfriends and girlfriends and a lot of sexual encounters. Very liberal with her drugs and alcohol and sexuality. This describes a scene in which she was trying to get clean, and the band made a promise to her that nobody would be using drugs around her, in the band, around the band. Needles would not be left. Guess they were injecting drugs. Guests were injecting drugs. One of them was about to tie off. Janis went nuts. I had never seen anyone explode like that. She was screaming and crying. And Travis walked in. She screamed at him. We had a pact. You promised me there wouldn't be any of that in front of me. I was over my head and I tried to calm her down. I said, they're just doing mescaline, because I thought that's what it was. She said, you don't understand. I can't see that. I just can't stand to see that. I think it's important to note this, that her struggles were real. It wasn't just like she's just like, determined to kill herself with drugs and alcohol. She was struggling, and that's kind of sad, that she knew she had a problem. She wanted to get clean, but she couldn't. And she hung out and played music with all the greats of that time, the Grateful Dead. She had a short relationship and longer friendship with Pigpen. And mind you, Pigpen is the singer of the Grateful Dead, who has that very raspy voice. I love it, by the way. And so she's like the female Pigpen, interestingly enough. What else? This is very long, and you see all these names like Allen Ginsberg, Grateful Dead, Country Joe McDonald, which she had a relationship with. There's a lot of it. A lot of, Mama Cass, Mamas and Papas, Jimi Hendrix, Joni Mitchell, I'm just obviously skipping through all this because it's far too much to go over. But I mean, you get the picture. We all know Janis Joplin became famous. She split with Big Brother and the holding company and had a solo career. She had her own backup bands. And blah blah blah. You know the story. She would often perform like completely drunk. She performed at Woodstock and Three Sheets to the Wind. There was a huge delay for her performance, and during that time, she was drinking and injecting heroin. So by the time she performed, she was completely wasted. So I'm just gonna go right to the end. I mean, we know she had some hits and fame and all that. Lots of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, let's go here. Personal life. Lots of relationships. This is interesting. Joplin cursed like a truck driver, did not believe in wearing undergarments, was rarely seen without her bottle of Southern Comfort, and delighted in playing the role of sexual predator. How often do you see a woman playing the role of sexual predator? Not just like open to sexuality, sexual predator, they called her. That's amazing. I don't know. It's really funny. I don't know any sexual predators. Maybe they just avoid me. I don't know. Joplin made a revealing statement about her sexuality. Her friend, the Grateful Dead's road manager. Blah blah blah. I hear a rumor that somebody in San Francisco is spreading stories that I'm a dyke. You can go back there and find out who it is and tell them that Janis says she's gotten it on with a couple of thousand cats in her life and a few hundred chicks, and see what they can do with that. Oh man, she just does not give an F. That's a pretty bold statement. It's like, I hear there's a rumor that going around that I'm a dyke. You can tell them I've gone on with a couple thousand cats and a few hundred chicks. Amazing. A couple thousand men and a few hundred women. Sunday, October 4th, 1970, she was found dead on the floor. Alcohol was present in the room. Other drugs and paraphernalia were present. They believe she OD'd because there was a particularly strong batch of heroin that other people OD'd the same weekend. However, overdosed with several of her dealers' other customers during the same weekend. Her death was ruled accidental. Peggy Caserta, a longtime female lover of hers, also fellow drug user, she insisted that Joplin's death was not an accidental overdose, but rather a result of a head gash suffered after the hourglass heel on her slingback sandal caught in the shag carpet, causing her to lose her balance. However, the drugs and alcohol may have played a role. So I guess she's saying that she hit her head. So I don't know. I mean, maybe she could have just been, so messed up that she fell and hit her head and died. But either way, drugs and alcohol were the real underlying cause of her death. And that's pretty much it. The rest is history. Let's look at her astrology. Okay. So she's got her sun in Capricorn. And, one of the things that's interesting is that when we think about Janis Joplin, we don't think about her band, the holding company. And I think some people have stated that musically they couldn't really stand up to her. That's why it wasn't like, you have other bands like Led Zeppelin, for instance, or the Grateful Dead. It's not it wasn't Robert Plant and Led Zeppelin, or Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead. They were whole bands. There was all of them. But with Janis Joplin, it was not her band, it was her. Even though they started out like the band recruited her, and it wasn't like Janis Joplin and the Big Brother and the Holding Company. That's just how they framed it over time. The media framed it like that, and it just stuck because she stood out over all of them. And the reason I'm bringing that out partially is because her son's in Capricorn, and Sun and Capricorns are very often stand out as leaders, because the sign of Capricorn, it's the sign of the boss, leader, boss. So Capricorn Sun. So her son is, she's a boss lady, first of all. It's basically in conjunct the 12th house cusp. So it's very much 12th house Sun. And so for creativity, performance, alter ego, subconscious, but also for, drinking, drugs, alcohol, 12th house, for the escapism that comes with the 12th house. That's also prominent here. It is part of this grand trine that, well, it's out of sign. It's in between, the Capricorn and then the air sign of Libra and Gemini, with the Neptune and Uranus, and then Saturn here is a little further out. But also prominent for wild behavior, drugs and alcohol, especially Neptune in the 8th house. And then also, which I'll get to more, Uranus conjunct the ascendant Lord Saturn. So wild, but this is a trine, so it's more about skills rather than really extreme, excessive, out there behavior. However, these planets are these planets, whether they are in hard aspect or easy aspect, squares, sextiles, trines, or squares, oppositions. Neptune aspecting the sun is still going to have a Neptunian influence. Uranus aspecting the sun is still going to have a Uranian influence. So it's still going to be that wild, wild Uranian, electric. Remember electric in the beginning? That's also because it's conjunct to ascendant Lord Saturn, which I'll get to. But the influence of Neptune as well, plus being in the 12th house, that's, and then not only that, then if we look further, then we can also see that Mercury and Venus, which I'll get to more, but they're also in the 12th house, moving into the 1st house, but still strong in between 12th, 1st, right? So we're getting a lot of 12th house influence, which is great for performance, right? Because you're getting that alter ego influence, you're getting the creative vibe, the imagination is enhanced, the subconscious, the mystical influences. But Capricorn is like the least, Capricorn's the most materialistic sign. So it's the least prone towards, well, I shouldn't say that, because actually you have spiritual, I was going to say it's the least spiritually natured, but you actually, we do see spiritual teachers with Capricorn suns, but that's also because they're playing a leadership role. So yeah, there can be spirituality with Capricorn. It's just more likely it tends towards material things. So here in the 12th house, it's definitely relating to escapism, wanting to dissolve the boundaries and move into that that expansive state where she liked to be in, with drugs and alcohol. Her moon, and this is a great combination. Moon in Cancer conjunct Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter's exalted, Moon's in domicile. Moon and Jupiter together love each other. They're not super close, but close enough that it's still very strong, right? And Jupiter is the 2nd house cusp. So here we're seeing what, her voice. Why is her voice? And we'll see this combination a lot of times with a lot of musician types, actors, because it creates really strong, powerful expression. The moon is the heart, and if it's in good dignity, then you're getting a lot of very strong emotional type expression, or Jupiter, depending what house Jupiter rules, but here it's coming from the voice. So her voice is connected to the heart. It's really heartfelt, very emotional, very powerful. Jupiter's very big. It's retrograde, and I wonder, Jupiter here, and I wonder if that has anything to do with the raspiness. It's not quite, it's because sometimes, we have a lot of different examples of Jupiter ruling the second house. Jupiter can be, well, many different things, obviously, but it's often very nice, Jupiter, but hers is like soulful, deep, powerful, raspy, right? That could be other influences as well, but the retrograde makes me wonder if that there's part of that makes it a little more like grizzly, growly. I'd have to see more examples to confirm that. That's just speculating about that. But what is interesting also is that Black Moon Lilith is in here, right in between the moon and Jupiter. And Black Moon Lilith, we know, represents female sexuality often in a more negative way. Definitely female sex symbols, but it can be that darker side of sexuality, right? And then, even though these are very well dignified, moon and Jupiter, and is also together, and also in the fifth house, great for performance, right? Artistry, creativity, being on stage, getting recognized because of the trine to the ascendant. It's not exactly trine by sign, but it is trine the first house, right? 8 degrees Pisces would be around here. 19 degrees Pisces would be around here. So, so the fifth house is also excellent. This is very, very prominent. We see other famous stars with similar combinations. Kurt Cobain had this. I think Jimi Hendrix might have had something similar. Jimmy Page might as well. A lot of different celebrities have similar combinations. Alternately, somebody like Hitler had it in Capricorn, moon and Jupiter, together with South Node. So you can see the difference, right? Okay. So this is great. This is very, very powerful for somebody like Janis Joplin. Like, powerful voice in a wonderful house, very popular, very potent. Moon and Jupiter, great together. And then we're bringing in the sexuality of Lilith as well into that very prominent fifth house of romance, fifth house, right? So that's all very telling. Next, we can look at the ascendant, and we have South Node directly conjunct ascendant. And this is very, very important to consider because, well, let's look at some other examples. Amy Winehouse had the North Node conjunct the ascendant. Sid Vicious had the North Node conjunct the ascendant. And those are two examples who had very similar destinies to Janis Joplin. She had South Node conjunct the ascendant. So the nodes, whichever, North Node, South Node conjunct the ascendant, has a very potent influence on the person. Here, this is with the South Node. I mean, it almost, if you look at their lives, it's almost the same. The difference is that the South Node shows the early half of life. So with Amy Winehouse and Sid Vicious, they were much more about relationships, right? Because they had South Node in the seventh house, so they were living out their relationships. Sid was devoted to Nancy. Amy Winehouse was devoted to that other guy who was a horrible influence on her. He was a drug addict himself. The difference with Janis Joplin is that she was not devoted to anyone. She just wanted literally thousands of men and hundreds of women, right? And it's reversed, right? She wasn't obsessed with one person. She wanted all of them. Okay, so that's the nodal axis. That's how it works. It especially in the first half of life compared to the second half of life. Second half of life, she would have become obsessed with specific relationships had she lived long enough. Second half of life, she would have just been like, okay, I fell in love with this person, I want to be with them forever, we're getting married, we're not divorcing. And she would have dropped all that, 1,000 partners nonsense, whatever. It wasn't nonsense. I mean, obviously she was having fun, she enjoyed herself, it's her choice. I'm not casting judgment, but that's how it would have changed. And South Node conjunct Ascendant also shows, especially first half of life, that extreme sort of self-awareness, self-confidence, all her energy is concentrated on her as an individual, because her ascendant now is being lit up by the South Node in the first half of life. Right, so that's very strong, powerful, prominent. And that the nodes are also bringing in, when they're this close to the ascendant, descendant, a lot of destructive qualities, because it's just the nature of the nodes. They're very powerful in an obsessive way, in a, had she lived long enough, it would have changed. These are also eclipse points, and so they can cause eclipses. They overshadow, they kind of cause an imbalance and a shadow. They can be very creative and destructive at the same time. Obviously, not everyone with the nodes conjunct their ascendant descendant is going to die young. They're not all going to become drug alcohol addicts like these examples were, like Janis Joplin, Amy Winehouse, Sid Vicious. But the potential is there. That's one factor. Right? We'll have to look at other things, like her ascendant lord Saturn conjunct Uranus, and this is very telling as well, right? Electric, they describe right up front, she's electric, right? That's Uranus conjunct the ascendant lord Saturn in Gemini, and Uranus is at 0 degrees. So this Uranus is very, very prominent, very powerful. It's basically conjunct the IC, so the 4th house cusp. It's making her electric. Saturn is representing her body. Her body is conjunct the Uranus, being plugged into a 240-volt outlet. All right, sort of like another example of this is Robin Williams, and this does cause problem. Uranus, any of the outer planets conjunct the ascendant lord will cause problems. This is making her electric, her dynamic, rebellious, completely independent. Just doing whatever, that quote, like she just didn't give a damn. Like she was just going to be her, be completely uniquely her. South Node conjunct ascendant lord conjunct Uranus, incredibly independent, just full on Janis Joplin. If you don't like it, suck a whatever, suck an egg, or I don't even know why that makes sense, why people say that, but put that in your pipe and smoke it. She was just that dynamic, that unique. And Uranus also is it's stimulants. Uranus craves stimulation. I mean, I know because I have it on my ascendant lord. So it's like one of those things where, I mean, I did damage to myself. I'm not going to lie. I was, so obsessed with, and I have North Node in the 1st house. Luckily, it's not as close as, Janis Joplin or any of the other examples I talked about. But Uranus really makes you crave stimulants because you're trying to electrify yourself with Uranus. So like whether you're talking about Robin Williams or Janis Joplin, these people, and Robin Williams also did, I'm not sure about alcohol, but at least, drugs like cocaine, right? He wanted to be electrified, like, so Uranus craves that craving for stimulation, right? Whether you're just talking about like on a more innocent level, like coffee and cigarettes, maybe that'll be enough for some people, but on a more serious level, drugs and alcohol, especially if you're successful and talented and famous and you have the money, like you don't have to worry about not being able to do your job. Like, yeah, I mean, it's going to degrade her voice, but still, it's like she's already making money. She's already famous. Even though she started before she was famous, it's like she had the skill, she had this talent. It wasn't, it's not like using your intellect. I mean, whatever. What I'm trying to get at is that if drugs and alcohol can make it so that a person can't perform their livelihood, they're not going to do it, at least not nearly as much, because otherwise they can't make it, they can't succeed, they're going to fail, they're going to not have any money, they might not have a home anymore, because they can't pay the rent, so forth. But she was able to do all that and still do drugs and alcohol. So obviously, and this grand trine that is very important, that is very shows skills and talents. Yeah, and fourth house also represents early childhood and home, obviously, but also a few other things. One is nighttime. So, it can relate to nighttime performance, performing in stage in nightclubs, things of that nature, but also just what makes us happy. Things that are in the fourth house are things that we just really enjoy doing, at home or just in general. All right. Now we got this Venus Mercury conjunction, not super close, but close enough. That's 5 degrees. That's not bad at all, right? And that's also for musicians, that's especially in the 12th house, that's really prominent. We'll see that a lot. Actually, a really notable one is Bach had Venus and Mercury in Pisces in the 12th house with an Aries ascendant, so fully in 12th. Sun, an exalted sun in Aries on the ascendant with an exalted Venus conjunct Mercury in Pisces in the 12th. I mean, of course, but he's like, Bach, the musical mastermind, the musical god. But in general, Venus and Mercury together are great for music, right? Great for the arts in general, anything artistic, especially in the 12th house. That's going to be really powerful and prominent. It is moving into the first house, so it's not fully in the 12th. I'd say that this sun is very much in the 12th house. It's 1 degree from the 12th house cusp and 12th whole sign house. It's in so these are having 12th first house influences and excellent for creative pursuits, music, writing, artistry in general, that sort of thing. Venus is ruling the 3rd house, so her expression, her intellect, that's quite good. And it's not ruling a cusp, but it is the bulk of the 8th house. And Mercury is ruling the 8th house cusp. So 8th and the 12th is good, 8th and the 1st is not. So that's interesting. Mercury is also ruling the 4th cusp. I see, 4th house. So Mercury is ruling the 4th, excuse me, it's retrograde, but this is also one of the things that makes her happy because it's the 4th house cusp, but also the 8th. So between Mercury and Venus, we're getting the full 8th house, because the cusp and the bulk of the 8th house in the 12th/1st. So the 8th house influencing the ascendant is not good. Also with South Node here as well, because South Node's going to lose strength as the North Node gets stronger. So the older she gets, the more this is going to play out, bringing 8th house influence onto her ascendant. That can be fall from grace, or it can mean literal death, right? Because that's the 8th house. Yeah, so when the 8th house can represent like virtual death too, like, that's why I said fall from grace, so like periods of downtime, like loss of reputation or something, accidents, crisis, like a proverbial death situation where the person's kind of down and out for a while, but literal death as well. Right, so that's not good. That's not very healthy. Chiron is conjunct the North Node, and that's quite different. That's quite unique. I would be interested to see how that played out for somebody like Janis Joplin as she got older. her relationships, this could be because Chiron on the descendant, I basically have this, so I know what it's like. You have to be careful with Chiron on the descendant because you're going to attract Chironic type people to you, which means it's not necessarily bad. You just have to keep your radar up because you can attract very wounded relationships, people who really need help, who are really damaged. And that's bad because that can drag you down too, right? You don't want to, marry a drug addict because then you'll be a drug addict, basically. Like they're going to have a very strong influence on you, whoever you're partnered up with. So that's important. And she did have those kind of relationships. That one relationship, the lesbian relationship she had, that was a part of it. They were both into drugs, so they had to avoid each other so they wouldn't influence each other to do drugs. So that's something that happens with Chiron on the descendant, is the kind of relationships you have can be quite chironic, meaning quite wounded or debilitated in certain ways, and very heavy, very negative. On the plus side, it can be healing, because Chiron on the higher expression is the wounded healer, right? He learns after he heals himself, he becomes a healer. Well, actually, the mythology is a little bit different, but in practical purposes, in practicality, that's how it plays out. The healing, Chiron can be a healer, a teacher, a shaman, a mystic, somebody very evolved, right? So that can play out as well. You just have to keep, this is one of the benefits of astrology, like the great benefits is knowing how these planets work, and so what to watch out for and how to make the best out of it. Right. But that's interesting here. And so, just speculatively, if she lived longer, as she got older, she could have had a very steady, solid relationship with somebody who's quite unique and different, and maybe had some, debility, something that was off or weird or different or unique, but it could have been healthy nonetheless had she, evolved to that, and it could have been, powerful healing in that relationship. Maybe that person healed themselves and helped her to heal or something like that. Who knows? It's all speculation right now because she's dead. Pluto's in the 6th, and that's not so good for health, right? Because Pluto is a very destructive planet. Woe to her enemies if she had any, because Pluto will potentially destroy her enemies in the 6th house. Pluto is opposite Mercury by 3 degrees, and that's also not great, especially because Mercury is in this 8th house cusp, and it is, moving into the 1st house, conjuncting. It's pretty far from the ascendant, but with Venus here, there's a flow. I think it is influencing the ascendant. So Pluto is adding his destructive nature onto Mercury. Mercury is ruling the 4th house, the IC. So from a young age, right, we're getting a Pluto influence. Oppositions are difficult. Especially they play out in relationships. Oppositions are activated in any type of relationship. So when she makes friends with somebody, if she's communicating, talking, anytime, this is going to be activated. So like people influence her to do drugs more, right? And that's why she has to be careful of the kind of relationships she's in. And her Mercury is also what she enjoys, what she loves, because it's ruling the 4th house. So she goes home, she's hanging out with a friend, she's going to want to do drugs. She's going to want to be destructive. She's going to want to destroy her health, right? And if you get in a fight with her, she could, be quite destructive in that relationship too. Be really, nasty, malicious fighting. Of course, she's got the, this really solid moon, Jupiter in Cancer in the 5th house to smooth things over. So I don't think she was like, she could probably go both ways. She could probably be really, really aggressive and harsh and nasty, but also like a real sweetheart as well. Very loving and caring and benevolent and wise. Her sun is in conjunct Chiron exact, and so that's another issue, because let's see what sun's ruling the 7th house, so that's her 7th lord. So this is pointing to relationships again. I think relationships were a very important point, but there was a sore point here with sun and Chiron. Yeah, and I think that played out early on. We saw her overweight when she was young, and she had a lot of acne that messed up her face, and so she definitely had the Chironic vibe going on with her main, with her personality. The sun is the representation of the ego, the relationship to the world in the daily basis. It's the main light of the person. So she definitely had a difficult relationship with Chiron, with that being a wounded outcast, especially as it related to her relationships. People making fun of her, other people calling her names, right? Stuff like that. Mars is in the 10th. Mars in the 10th is one of the best places for Mars. It gains a lot of directional strength in the 10th because it can really fight for the career. It fights for, to be seen and heard, and to be at the top. Whatever planets are very high in the sky, in the 10th house, conjunct the MC, or just square the ascendant on the 10th side of things, on the high side of things. Those are planets that want to be above. Those planets are fighting to be on the top, to be the best at what they are doing. And Mars has that initiative, that aggressive quality. So this Mars in the 10th house really fights to be the best, the top of the charts, the top of the, whatever they're doing, they want to be the best. Sagittarius, it's Mars is all right. It does pretty well in Sagittarius because it's trine its own rulership in Aries. Generally speaking, here it's considered peregrine. So it doesn't, but directionally it's quite strong. And let's see what else. It has a trine from the North Node, but the North Node wasn't activated yet because she didn't live that long, right? But still, that's quite good. It's ruling the 9th house and most of the 2nd house. It's not ruling a cusp, but voice, we could say, voice is going to the top. And 9th house, that's not really very telling for her. I guess we could say like adventure, travel, things of that nature. Her studies, her pursuit, her higher education. If somebody was religious or philosophical or has some sort of like higher degree, then that makes sense for like a career for them. But I don't think it was extremely relevant for her. She did not do, I think she dropped out of college. But her music was her higher studies. So maybe that's how you can, she had a PhD in singing, I guess you could say, something like that. In any case, I don't know about her religious or philosophical beliefs. I don't think she was very religious. Mars is semi-square Mercury, and so this is pretty argumentative as well. So her Mercury is in the, it's in the 12th house, so there could have been like some passive aggressive. Mercury in the 12th house is going to be more quiet, unless they're acting, or performing or singing. But there could have been some passive aggressiveness with the Mercury in the 12th, because it has that semi-square to Mars and the opposition to Pluto. At the same time, if there was an outburst with her, I'm sure it was very loud, very strong, and potentially destructive and angry because of this combination, the semi-square to Mars and the opposition to Pluto, and the ascendant Lord conjunct Uranus, right? So sort of like that, passive aggressive, I would say. What else is there? Mercury in conjunct Moon. That's interesting as well. And that could relate to, yeah, I mean, her moon is in really good dignity, but this in conjunct to the, well, there's a sesquus square to the ascendant and to the node, south node, but the in conjunct to Mercury, I think is probably, you know, adding to her frustration, inability to fully express herself other than through her art, her music. You know, she probably had a difficult time in regular communication because Mercury's in the 12th house, right? So the 12th house would lend itself more to artistic expression, but less so to mundane things. So I think there were things that she probably didn't know how to talk about, didn't know how to express or explain to other people, but it came out through music, obviously very, very strongly. But yeah, there's some tension there between her heart and her ability to express that. But I think the music solved that to a large degree, perhaps not completely, but enough. Enough to convey a powerful message through her music, but maybe not enough to express all the things that she was feeling on the inside, because she was very emotional, right? So, and then if we go back to this ascendant Lord Saturn conjunct Uranus, which is also the co-ruler of Aquarius. Saturn conjunct Uranus does have a struggle between Uranian sort of wanting to be free, not wanting to follow any rules, being completely spontaneous, completely in the moment. Uranus has no concept of the past or the future, does not make plans for the next second, does not make plans for the next moment, let alone the next week or the next year. It's all about now. It's the great awakener. You know, it embodies the awakened spirit, really, the enlightened, awakened spirit. Saturn is the opposite. It's all about laws, rules, restriction, discipline, hard work, and it's very conservative. These two are at odds. You know, they kind of blend well, I guess you could say, in Aquarius. They come together, but when they're conjunct, they're kind of fighting, because Saturn will normally restrict any other planet that it comes in contact with. But Uranus really doesn't care about Saturn, because after all, Uranus is the father of Saturn. So, you know, we don't take orders from our children usually. That's not the normal way. We don't, you know, we're you know, if our kid tries to boss us around, we might laugh and scoff at, you know, just be like, ha, you know, you can't tell me what to do. You know, sort of like that meme where the old man is sitting in the chair. I think it's from Lord of the Rings, and he's like, you have no power here, you know, like that sort of thing. That's Uranus. It's like, you have no power here, Saturn. What do you? But at the same time, Saturn is a very powerful planet, and it is her ascendant lord. So there were periods where she was trying to haul it in and be more reserved, conservative, Saturnian, disciplined, structured, strong. And Saturn does okay in Gemini. But Gemini is great for the expression as well, you know, really accompanies the powerful voice, right? The ability to use it well, that's Gemini, right? Neptune in the 8th I think, is pretty self-explanatory. I already touched on it, but Neptune's drugs and alcohol, creativity, lies, deception, delusion, fantasy, glamour, acting, creativity, mysticism, spirituality. So all those things, obviously she went more in the the creative plus drugs and alcohol, and in the eighth house as well. It's a very deep, potent house. Often not, sexuality as well, for both eighth and 12th house. That's very strong, prominent. And what else was I going to say? Powerful intuition, I think, both with the moon and Jupiter and Cancer in the 5th house, and then Neptune in the 8th, trine her sun, trine her ascendant lord. And then Uranus also can provide very powerful intuition. That might have been completely obscured by the drugs and alcohol, but it was probably there to some extent, and at least more so when she was not so drunk and high. What else? Mars is in really good aspect to the ascendant and the nodes, sextile trine. That's quite good. But yeah, but you can see mostly her voice was really carried by this Jupiter. This Mars doesn't really explain her voice, so that's interesting. Let's take a look at the Draconic. We get the moon and Jupiter in the 12th, moving into the 1st. Basically, Jupiter's conjunct the 1st house, and Jupiter in the 1st house is excellent. Gains a lot of directional strength there. Really makes the person quite big personality, right? Some people say it makes the body big, not necessarily, right? In her case, she did have problems with overweight as a child. I don't know if this is the cause, but maybe this Venus influencing the ascendant is similar. In any case, that's quite good. Pluto is also in the 1st house, still in the 1st quadrant. Pluto and Pisces, so that definitely points to potential drug and alcohol destructiveness, right? We're getting North Node and Chiron in the 2nd house, so for voice, that's and then Neptune in the 3rd, but these are very minor because they're not making any conjunctions. MC in Cancer right in between the moon and Jupiter. I think that's prominent for her career, her voice, right? Mars in Cancer on the 6th house cusp, again, for the health, debilitated planet here, not so great. I wonder if she had any violent outbursts. I would not be surprised, but I didn't read anything about it, and I don't know anything about it, but I would not be surprised if she was prone to violence at times. But that's just speculation on my part. We have an exalted Mercury here, and Sun in Virgo, exalted Mercury in Virgo and Venus in Virgo in the 7th house. Very good for performance, being on stage, relationships, being seen and heard. Ascendant over Neptune, that's ascendant and south node over natal Neptune. So again, drugs and alcohol, that's not surprising to see that. Drugs, alcohol, creativity, glamour. She was very glamorous as well, like in her own weird, unique way. I mean, she had the Aquarius ascendant, which is always weird, completely unique, doesn't really like to follow anyone. But she did have that. She liked to, she liked to dress up and wear these boas and, look like Janis Joplin looked, Her ascendant Lord Saturn's in Capricorn, along with Uranus in the 11th house. And so that's in domicile. So that's a very strong Saturn in the 11th. So that will greatly benefit the 11th, which is career success, groups, networks, popularity. So that's fitting for her. Makes her more, popular, and gives her leadership in groups. She was the leader of the group. That's very appropriate. Okay. Guys, I think that's pretty much it for Janis Joplin. I also have to go pee really bad, so I'm going to end it here. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like button, subscribe if you have not already. Leave a comment down below and book a reading with me, guys. I'm available. You can go to my website at macroastrology.com or email me directly at macrogoalmachine@yahoo.com. And that's it. I'll see you again soon. Thank you. Bye.